We're going to start with the topic of a balancing act to deliver water to your tank. Oh, okay. Ken was over here, and all of a sudden I lost my speaker. So presenting on this will be Ken Manning. Now I think almost everyone here in the audience probably knows Ken. He's been working in water in the San Gabriel Valley for decades. He's the executive director of the San Gabriel Basin Water Quality Authority. He became the executive director of the Water Authority in March of 2011. Prior to that, he served as a board member for the authority and as the CEO of the Chino Basin Water Master. He has also served as a board member for Upper San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District, president of the Association of Groundwater Agencies, and is currently the chair of the California Groundwater Coalition. He holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Architectural Design from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and a Master's of Public Administration from Cal State Northridge. Please join me in welcoming Ken.
Thank you, Cynthia. I'm going to try and get this level of the mic to work here. While I'm fiddling with this, or not. Is there a switch on there? I like to move around a little bit while I'm talking, so as I get a chance to show you some of the slides that I put together for the presentation here today, I can get a chance to get some eye contact. What Cynthia didn't explain or go in terms of my past is that I'm very fortunate in that I have lived almost my entire life in the San Gabriel Valley. And my parents lived almost their entire life in the San Gabriel Valley and had roots in water. Now, my father was one of the first board members of the Upper San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District and was a member of the Water Master here in the San Gabriel Basin for many, many years, going back into the 1960s and 70s. But also I have other relatives who are active in the water industry. Some of you I saw from the sand and gravel industry here today. My great uncles were one of the first rock and sand companies here in Irwindale, Manning Brothers Rock and Sand. So we have a lot of roots in the water industry here, and so I guess that was the reason I got volunteered to try and do this very interesting task of trying to bring everybody in this audience up to a point where you understand water policy as it sits today. So I'm here today to try and lead this class and bring you up to date, give you a history of what it is that we've been doing. So this is the title that I was given as we started talking about what we wanted to do in terms of presenting this as a topic, and the balancing act to deliver water to your tap. Well, as I started to do my research, this is really how the title of my talk ended up here. And this is a look at how water policy in the San Gabriel Valley was shaped by events, both man-made and natural. Because as we walk through the history of the San Gabriel Valley, you're going to see there were a number of events that shaped where we are today. So where do we start? First of all, let's get an understanding of what we're talking about, the San Gabriel Basin. So here's a picture from space of the San Gabriel Basin. The black line represents the boundaries of the area we're talking about. Now, these are not political boundaries. These are geologic boundaries. And the areas that are outside of that area are outside because they're not interreacting with the San Gabriel Basin. We're looking at a giant bathtub here, filled with sand and gravel and clay that also happens to have a lot of water down in it. And we're living on this crust of this giant bathtub that provides all of us with groundwater. As a matter of fact, 90% of the groundwater, 90% of the use of water in the San Gabriel Basin comes from this groundwater basin. It's a huge groundwater basin, about the size in terms of area of the Lake Tahoe. So we're talking about a large bathtub. And matter of fact, in California, there are 518 bathtubs like this. Ours happens to be one of the largest. Imagine what it looked like back in 1769 when Father Serra and Captain Portolo set foot into the San Gabriel Valley on this mission that they were on to try and establish this series of outposts throughout Alta, California, or Alta, Mexico, which is the area that we are in. if you read through this, you'll notice there's some interesting observations. First of all, as they stepped down into this valley, they were looking at an area of spacious grass, but the grass was burned. Also, marshy areas that they came across. They experienced an earthquake on the first day in the San Gabriel Valley. Interesting. The other thing that I thought was interesting is their reference to the Puente, which is really the first reference to an area or a region within the San Gabriel Basin that we can find is recorded. Because the area they're referring to is the area that turned out to be Puente. It didn't become La Puente until it incorporated many years later. It was always Puente. Father Serra officiated at the naming of this permanent settlement in the San Gabriel Valley. Most people think that was up in San Gabriel, Mission San Gabriel. It wasn't. It was down in Whittier Narrows. The first mission in the San Gabriel was down in Whittier Narrows. Why did they move it? Well, as it turns out, that was the very first public water policy decision in the San Gabriel Valley, because it flooded in 1772 and 1773 in the Whittier Narrows. They couldn't leave the mission there, or it would have been wiped out very soon. So they moved it about 5 miles north up to the area that we now consider to be the city of San Gabriel, just south of the Raymond Dike there. That ushered in an era that I call the Mission era. Lasted for a little over 50 years. You can kind of picture this San Gabriel Valley, fairly virgin land. Agricultural crops were the predominant areas that around the mission were being developed as crops. Vineyards, of course. I mean, this is the church. Going to have wine, so they've got vineyards. Some grapes and oranges were there, but livestock was the main product that they were trying to cultivate here in the San Gabriel Basin back in the 1770s up into 1834. Hides were kind of the bartering system. They were using hides to barter. But that's what the first diversion of water happened here in the San Gabriel Valley. Before that, water just moved down the San Gabriel River and the native Gabrielino Indians. As a matter of fact, there were about 7,000 Gabrielino Indians in the valley at the point in time when Father Serra established the mission here in San Gabriel. And the partnership with the Indians, I'll call it that, I'm not sure it was really a partnership. The partnership with the Indians developed a culture here where crops were being developed, and we were starting this whole development of the San Gabriel Valley, but they were diverting water into what they called zangas, dirt ditches. That's all they were, zangas, and they were later, as you get closer to 1834, they were replaced with clay pipes. Still, a lot of slow growth going on in the San Gabriel Basin. We moved into this rancho era. Now, a lot of people associate the San Gabriel Valley in Southern California with this rancho era, but in fact, that era was relatively short. It wasn't a long time. Now, when Father Serra moved into California to establish the missions, remember, this area was part of Spain. It wasn't a part of Mexico, it was a part of Spain. And Spain was interested in having a presence here. Well, Mexico gained its independence in 1822, and with that came a change in land policy. They all of a sudden wanted to have a greater presence in Alta Mexico. They wanted to make sure that people in the northern part of their territories had a connection, because they were afraid that the Russians coming south down the coast were going to take over and populate the portion of their territory known as Alta Mexico. So ranchos were encouraged. And during this period of time, we saw the development of some interesting folks that came into the valley. People like Ignacio Palomares and Richard Behar. That's the area they took ranchos in the areas near Pomona. Roland and Workman, large area in what is now a Pony City of Industry area. Louis Arenas, Azusa Baldwin Park area. Interesting guy. He was the first mayor of the city of Los Angeles, by the way. Hugo Reed was the area kind of around Arcadia. Henry Dalton, interesting character, played an important history in water in the San Gabriel Basin. He acquired his property from Reed and Arenas. Now, as I was reading through and doing my research on this, I found that he got the property, but there really isn't any record whether he bought it or he won it in a card game. But he did get the property, and he gained title to it, and he played a tremendous role in the water here in the San Gabriel Basin. And another interesting guy is Benjamin Davis Wilson. This guy kept showing up as I was doing my research. Benjamin Davis Wilson. Areas of Pasadena, San Gabriel, Arcadia, those areas were areas where he had a large tract of land. But he's an interesting character in history. First of all, he grew up in Tennessee, moved down here to California, and his first tract of land happened to be what is now the city of Riverside. His wife died while he was there and moved to the San Gabriel Valley because he was really wanted to get away from Riverside because of this situation with his wife had passed away. He moved to the San Gabriel Valley and was a fairly innovative guy. He had a son-in-law who was an engineer, and they teamed up and did a lot of work in the San Gabriel Valley. Well, he definitely left his mark in California. Mount Wilson, is named after Benjamin Wilson. He also happens to be the grandfather of General George S. Patton, and he was the second mayor of the city of Los Angeles. But with this diversion of water and all of these ranchos came greater pressure on the water systems here in the San Gabriel Basin. So we start to see more diversions. Kind of a depiction of what rancho life was like back in that period of time. A lot of cattle roving and working with cattle and livestock. But you can imagine, these ranchos were a long distance apart. Pomona, Duarte, Pasadena, La Puente. And these people didn't see each other. They were just inhabiting the same geographic region. So now we move into an area 1848 to 1870, which is really, I call the gold rush era, for lack of any better term. The Treaty of Hidalgo happened in 1848, where the areas of what is now California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, etc., moved out of the hands of Mexico into the United States as a part of war. The United States and Mexico in 1845 went to war, and as a result of that, that portion of Mexico moved into the hands of the United States. Now, it's interesting, that's about half the territory of what was then Mexico. Moved into becoming territories of the United States. But it was less than 1% of the population of Mexico. So in terms of making the decision to cut off the property that they owned going north and making peace, using that property as the barter with which they were able to make peace, was really not a difficult decision at all because less than 1% of their population lived in this area. Well, at the same time, later that year, gold was discovered in Northern California. And that created a different demand here in California for products. Now, all of a sudden, the cattle industry here in the San Gabriel Basin became very important. Cattle was selling at $2, $1, $2, $3 a head. All of a sudden, is now $70 a head. And all of a sudden, cattle became a big industry because they had to feed those people who were moving into the Northern California for both the gold rush and also, by the way, the silver mines of New Mexico, or Nevada. So crops were important. The other thing that changed was that the state and federal laws now were governing ownership of land, ownership of property. Well, that also means water. So the rules changed in the San Gabriel Basin throughout California on how we deal with water. Another interesting event happened in 1862 during this period of time. There was a massive flood. As a matter of fact, it said that almost 200,000 cows died in the flood of 1862. One other thing that happened in 1862 as a result of this flood, the Rio Hondo River was created. The Rio Hondo River did not exist in California, in the San Gabriel Valley, until 1862. Railroads and land development, 1870s to 1900. Population in 1870 of Los Angeles, from 1870 to 1880, was roughly 10,000 people. There were a few outposts throughout San Gabriel Valley. If you read about them, it's very interesting. Some of them very colorful. I was reading about El Monte, which is at the time was called Monte. It wasn't El Monte, it was Monte. And they had pretty much a vigilante mentality in the community of Monte. And at that point in time, there was a group called the Monte Boys. It was nothing more than a vigilante group that was keeping track of what was going on. It was a gang in the 1880s. Well, that mentality in the San Gabriel Valley kind of ushered in this whole first water wars and water disputes in the San Gabriel Valley as a result of the Right Act. The state of California enacts a program to try and settle some of these water rights issues called the Right Act. Well, what it did was the unintended consequences, it started a massive land rush. So you now have, you can kind of picture this, in Los Angeles, you've got Los Angeles starting to grow. Literally from 1880 to 1890, Los Angeles grew 10 times in size, the city of Los Angeles. Now you've got people like Otis and Chandler with the Los Angeles Times, who also own massive tracts of land outside of the city limits, who are interested in promoting Los Angeles and the communities surrounding Los Angeles in order to further their land developments. And so they're doing a lot of promotion outside of Southern California to try and get people to move to California. Well, at the same time, these water wars are starting to develop, and people's water rights are being infringed upon. And so what you start to see are these new water companies that are being developed. And I just listed a couple of them there. You've got Pomona Land and Water, Duarte Mutual Irrigation, Sunny Slope, but there was also Azusa Irrigating, Beardsley Water, Azusa Land and Water, which became Covina Irrigating later on. These were all formed in order to establish water rights and protect the water rights of those people. And we had in California, basically there's water rights are based upon preferential rights. Preferential rights mean those first in have rights, those who have preferential rights to that water. Also, it says that in California, that your rights are also the further up in the river you are, the more right you have to water. So there was this constant fight to establish strongholds of water further up into the river. This plays an important part in some of the wars that were going on. This is Covina Citrus Association, picture from about that same era taken, and you can see there was a lot of citrus going in our area. This happens to be the city of Azusa, about that same period of time. Now, if you look at the area over here, you can see it right here. That's Azusa Boulevard, right here. Azusa Canyon. Not many houses during this period of time. And so in the 1890s, 1900s, we were pretty much an agrarian society dealing mainly with citrus crops. In 1884 to 1889, there was some compromises that were made here in the San Gabriel Valley that allowed water to be able to be used by multiple users here in the San Gabriel Valley. People in Puente wanted to have water for their crops as much as people did up in Azusa. And so in order to get that water down to them, there had to have some sort of an arrangement. So a compromise was developed in the San Gabriel River, and the first real organization of water rights in the San Gabriel Basin came about as a part of this compromise of 1884 and 1889. The Committee of Nine. Now, those of us in the water industry have been hearing about the Committee of Nine. We know about the Committee of Nine. It's been around since 1889. And they were the first real organization that dealt with water rights and making sure that people had access to water in some organized way. Now,